we are joined with the one, the only former Lieutenant Karen Kwiatkowski. Did I get that?
Close enough.
No, tell me. I want to nail it.
It's Kwiatkowski.
Kwiatkowski. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Kwiatkowski.
Well, no, yes, perfectly fine. Former Lieutenant Karen
Colonel.
Kwiatkowski.
Lieutenant Colonel.
Oh, LTC, that's what that means. Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. Thank you for that. I will put Colonel in just so I know. And just so the audience would know, Lieutenant Colonel Karen, former Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski is a retired U.S. Air Force officer whose assignments included duties as Pentagon desk officer and various roles as National Security Agency. She's author of several books, including Africa Crisis Response. African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future. That was in 2000. And Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solutions. I have one question on that, by the way, towards the end of this. We were bombing apparently in Somalia recently. And, when all of those people, I think it was those troops that died, I believe it was Niger. I could be wrong, but I thought it was Niger.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, what the hell are we doing in Niger? Most people don't even know about AFRICOM, that we have forces and troops in that particular region. It's just kind of a silent shadow war that's taking place in the background of other conflicts.
Yeah.
But what should I call you? Should I call you
Karen? Call me
Okay.
Karen. That's the best way. Yeah.
I always feel like using the title of the person, like Colonel Wilkinson, I call him Colonel or Chief, Master Chief. But I will go with Karen. Thank you for joining me, by the way. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess I have two subjects. One is on Ukraine. The other one is on Israel. And we can start with Ukraine. Financial Times is reporting that Donald Trump, which is amazing, gave assurances to Europe that he will give them, quote unquote, security guarantees. Now, in the context of these security guarantees, this was going to be on issues of intel. This was going to be on issues, he said, air cover, providing that the Europeans were willing to put troops on the ground. Now, this was always a no-no for Russia. Always a no-no. It was, I have a hard time believing that in the conversation with Putin in Alaska and conversations going back for years, that was the entire point of the war, actually, right? No NATO expansion. Putting troops in Ukraine is effectively NATO expansion by other means. That Trump doesn't know this. And yet, this is what he promised. Now, they also made the point of saying, we can rescind these at any moment. So we're giving you this, but this is not a guarantee. But we're willing to offer this. Now, when it happened the conversation with Lavrov, there was a clip that I had for you yesterday. I'll pull this clip up. It's okay. In the conversation with Lavrov gave an interview where Lavrov came out and effectively said, the Europeans are interested in war, but the Americans, they seem to be coming around to a particular point of view. This seems to be what Donald Trump wants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's a diplomat, so he's being very diplomatic in the way that he says this. I guess my question is, who is Trump lying to? The Russians? Or the Europeans? He hasn't lied to somebody.
He's lying to the Europeans, I think, and he's lying to the Russians. But I think he respects the Russians more. He respects the Russian team much more than I think he respects the Europeans. I think we can see that in how he deals with them. In fact, I remember after the meeting in the White House with all of the various heads in EU, von der Leyen and the NATO head and some of the key leaders in Europe, he was very profuse and lavish with his compliments, and almost every one of those compliments, almost to me, because I know what the records is of these guys. I understand what's been happening. And his compliments were really backhanded in some ways. Like he said to the German leader, Merz, he said, you're so popular in your own country. That is a bald-faced lie, and everybody knows it. I mean, he's the least popular. His support is collapsing. It's down below 30. I don't know. It's in the 30 percentile. So I almost thought Trump was trolling them or somehow just exercising his power over them, which I, we've seen him do this. He's very much competitive. He's very much the kind of guy that grabs your hand and shakes it harder, to show you that he's the boss or something. So I think he's definitely lying to the Europeans. I don't think he respects them. I think he respects Russia a little bit more. And really, you kind of have to. Russia's winning the war. Russia has not lied in any way that we can verify from the very beginning of this. They said why they were invading, to protect the Russian speakers in the Donbass. They said what the objectives of the special military operation was at the beginning. It had several objectives. None of those have changed. And none of those, of course, included taking over all of Ukraine. None of them included going further to the west. It's not an expansive program. It's a very focused operation, and they've never varied from that. So, I wish Trump would be more like Putin in the sense of being very clear and consistent with what he says. He isn't, I think. So I don't know. He's hard to figure out. Trump is. I don't think many of us normal people have dealt with a Trump before in real life. He's very
my dad.
Yeah, he's a strange one in some ways.
My dad, he was a habitual liar.
Dad?
My dad was a habitual liar. So yeah, I'm familiar with habitual liars. Okay. It's like when I see him, I'm like, oh, I know that guy.
You know that guy. Okay, well there you go. That's it. Yeah, and he. I remember when Bill Clinton was the president, and Bill was very likable. I remember I knew a military guy in Aviano. He had to go to the White House to get a medal. He had done something. You know what he did? He shot a bunch of Serbian aircraft from a faraway distance. It was totally like not a war hero kind of thing. But at that time, it was a big deal. He went to shake Bill Clinton's hand. And so when he got back, we asked him, what'd you think about Bill Clinton? And he said, oh my gosh, he's great. Now, these are people that are not Bill Clinton supporters per se. They're military people back in the mid 90s. They generally didn't support Bill Clinton. I'm just going to say that, the military was not waving Bill Clinton signs at that time. But he came back and he just said, Bill Clinton's greatest guy I've ever met. I couldn't believe how great he was. They just love him.
Everybody says that. They said Bill Clinton could be talking to a gardener.
And they love him. And they love
likability.
Yeah. So he has charm. And I think part of having charm is being willing to lie. Like, you're looking beautiful today. I love that dress. That color on you is great. We can say these things, and it's not harmful to say them because it makes the other person feel good. But I think, but with Bill Clinton, we said, oh, he likes to lie. He's a liar. With Trump, we don't say that. But, maybe people do say it. But I think a lot of the Trump supporters, they find his lying to be charming, to be part of his persona, his exaggeration that's beyond all imagination. Some of the stuff that he, we've got these, when he goes across the country and he says things and it's over the top. And many Trump supporters like it. I think it's funny, except for the fact that he's the president and he has a great deal of power. So now we don't know, is he just being over the top because that's who he is, or is he going to bring us World War III overnight? We're going to wake up and find out he did something crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, it destroys reality. I mean, I don't like it as a president. It destroys reality. Like, there's but he's a bad liar. Like, as you point out, they're so over the top.
Yes.
But in the case of, I want to make a deal. I want to come to terms. I want to do this. And then he turns around and says, hey, India, I'm going to go after you because you're supporting Russia. And I'm going to go after, whoever else that's supporting Russia. It's just like, okay, dude, you need to make up your mind. Here are missiles going into Ukraine at this point. It's like, okay, so A, you're negotiating, but B, you're also doing this other stuff. So which one is it?
Yeah.
And I guess on some level, you can make the case that he's trying to use that stuff as leverage or to try to find some leverage.
Yeah. He's a manipulator, and he likes to use leverage. The idea of making deals, that he's made his career on, and there is something to that. But it's one thing to make deals in an arena that you understand, and I think real estate, construction, New York City politics. I think he understood that pretty well. I don't think he knows a thing about foreign policy, and I think he makes an assumption that everybody is like us in America. You know, Americans, you know, we talk a lot, we're boisterous, we joke. You know, Americans are happy people generally. I mean, you know, we feel good about ourselves. Even in this bad economy, Americans, we're proud to be Americans, whatever. We like being Americans. And we think everybody else likes us just like we like us, and they don't. And we also don't understand how really shallow our own history is, in the sense of we're just a young country in many ways compared to, I mean, India has gone through so much. Take Iran. I mean, one of the oldest, the Persian society and culture is one of the oldest in the planet. And China, another one, been around forever. And the Chinese people, when they don't think, oh, I'm a communist Chinese, they think of themselves as Chinese, and then to a greater extent, maybe what part of China they come from, and they have an ancient history that they are connected to. And I don't think Trump has the slightest clue about that. So he thinks what works in America, over the top boisterousness, insults, trading insults, you know, which he does with pleasure. And we like that. Americans kind of enjoy that too. That doesn't really work in foreign policy, because other countries aren't like us. They don't hear what an American hears. You know, Americans, Trump makes a bad joke and we're just laughing. It's a bad joke or whatever. We're happy. It doesn't work that way when you're dealing with other countries, and it shouldn't. You know, there should be a sense of boundaries between countries in terms of how you treat people. And Trump knows this. Remember how upset he was when Zelensky showed up in a sweatsuit or whatever it was?
Yes.
To the White House. And so Trump understands the formalities, the respectful symbols, but then he ignores them when he opens his mouth. He's very disrespectful when he opens his mouth to other people that he doesn't even know in other countries who have their own interests and, oh, by the way, their own nuclear weapons.
Exactly. I don't know if he knows those formalities. I mean, it's very possible he was mad at Zelensky because Zelensky told him to wear a suit. He didn't do it. And I told you to do something. You didn't do something that I told you to do. And so he comes in the kind of janitor's outfit. Of course, it goes horribly wrong. It's something that you said that I want to nail down also, that I think is absolutely right. This is Trump in an Oval Office meeting, and they're asking him, well, hey, the Russians are saying they're not going to meet with Zelensky because they're saying that Zelensky is illegitimate. Trump comes out. This was the interview that Lavrov gave also. This was parts of the interview. Lavrov has been all over the place talking to Kristen, what is his name, Welker, U.S. media, everywhere else. Yeah. This is what Trump says here. And I think you're right. I don't think he understands the reality of why Russia is behaving or doing what they're doing or even saying what they're saying.
Question for Steve Witkoff, if I may.
Yeah.
This past weekend, Sergei Lavrov was saying that Putin will not sign a peace deal with Zelensky because Russia views him as illegitimate. Just wondering if the Russians have been relaying this to your team, if they view Zelensky, as a leader worth signing a peace deal with, if they will.
Doesn't matter what they say. Steve can answer, but I can answer too. Doesn't matter what they say. Everybody's posturing. It's all bullshit, okay? Everybody's posturing. Steve, do you have a different answer?
I agree with you, sir.
Yeah, they're not posturing. And he doesn't seem to get that Russia is very clear on their demands. They've been the same demands the entire way through. Give me your take on this.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Trump even had ever heard of the Minsk agreements, Minsk 1 and 2, which were guaranteed in part by the U.S., but also, Germany and I think France, some of the European, they provided their honor, their word that these agreements under Minsk back in 2014, 2013 would be implemented. And of course, they were not implemented. Not even the smallest things were implemented. There were a series of things that had to be done, and none of them were done. And Russia, of course, experienced that. But then later, I think Angela Merkel from Germany, she was one of the guarantors personally. And she said, we had no intention of doing that. That was just to buy time so Ukraine could arm up for this eventual fight with Russia. And she said that. And there's another example. That's something Trump would say, and this is Angela Merkel, who has spent an entire lifetime in German politics. So she knows better. So maybe we're criticizing Trump too much. Maybe we need to broaden the brush a little here with the people that don't know what they're doing. But Merkel said this, and I imagine the Russians already knew that they weren't, well, they knew they weren't honoring it, but they also knew that there was no intention, because they have spies just like everybody, you know, they listen in, they knew. And but that's the Russian experience up to this point. So now Trump is saying, well, yeah, we know Zelensky has overstayed his welcome. He's in a condition of martial law. His popularity is also down in the low 30s in his own country. So if he stood for election today, he would lose, meaning that he and all of his compadres and friends would be gone. And then there'd be a new government. What will that new government be? Nobody knows. It would be whatever the Ukrainians wanted, depending on how free or manipulated that election was, all in the future. Nobody knows. So it is not just dangerous to sign an agreement with sitting and reliable, you know, respected, elected presidents and prime ministers. We're asking him to sign an agreement with a guy who not only has conducted this war and shown himself to be a kind of a bad guy, but he literally is not legitimate. And so when legitimate signatories blow you off and lie to your face, which is what has been done to Russia, specifically with Minsk, but we could go back to other agreements as well, right? NATO will not move one step to the east. Yeah, well, that was an agreement too. That wasn't held up. So from Russia's perspective, this is not posturing. This is basically, okay, we've dealt with you before. You know, I mean, if you had a 4-year-old and you told him not to do something and he kept doing it, you pretty much would not trust him to not do it again, right? You need to see proof. You need to see a change in behavior before you can put your confidence in that 4-year-old. And it's the same with, Putin is looking at the West and he's saying, you know, I need to see a change in behavior, and I'm not seeing that. So I don't think it's posturing, but you can see there why Witkoff gets along so great with Trump, right? Yes, sir, Mr. Trump. I mean, that works, man. That works.
It's like any question I ask you, it's going to be a yes. You're the boss. It's like, this great leader deserves the Peace Prize. I don't know if you saw that clip of Witkoff. This man needs the Peace Prize. For the love of God, give this man the Peace Prize. It's like
amazing. It's amazing. Some people, I don't put a huge amount of credit into the people that hate Trump so bad they can't see straight. I get that. But I don't, if you're emotional with your evaluation and, you go, well, maybe they can't see straight. But actually, their warnings of authoritarianism and things like that, we are all seeing that. I mean, the whole country's seeing it. And it's putting the MAGA people and the Trump supporters, not the Republican establishment Trump supporters, because they love war. They love this Trump. They love an authoritarian Trump. But the voter from the middle of the country, the poorer voter, the first-time voter, or maybe the second-time voter, the guy that only has cast 2 votes and they were both for Trump, that guy or that gal, those people are put on their back heels now. They're like going, wait a minute, this isn't what he told us when he came out to Podunkville, and had a big rally. He didn't tell us this. And now he's doing these things. And so people are, Trump is letting his, well, I don't know what he wants to do, but he's certainly abandoning a lot of his base with what he's doing. His authoritarianism and his wars and his threats of wars, that's not what that's not why people voted for him. And I'll tell you the other thing, you wanted to talk about Israel a little bit. I know we probably don't have time, but Trump's position on Gaza is a thing that cannot be forgiven. Okay, that cannot be forgiven. With Biden, first off, Biden wasn't all there. We know that a committee, many of pro-Zionists were running the government. I think that's fair. I suspect that's what was happening. And they were Zionist and they loved Israel. Whatever Israel does is fine. And we funded Israel like we have done for, how many decades has it been? Unquestionably, with we don't question it. We don't put conditions. That's what we did. But Trump used that dissatisfaction to some extent to attack Biden or to attack Kamala Harris. And yet, not even 6 months in, not even a few months in, what was he doing? Oh, we're going to wipe Gaza off the face of the earth, and we're going to put a Trump Plaza in there or something, a Gaza Renaissance. I don't know. But Riviera on the Med. So, and he he goes back and forth on so many things. He has not really gone back and forth on Gaza. He has been locked into Netanyahu's will and wishes on Gaza, and all of the blood and the genocide and the starvation and the destruction itself, not just of Gaza, but of Israeli society. You know, nobody travels to Israel. Nobody buys Israeli products, and they're not going to. Long after this is over, they're not going to. Israel has proven itself to be a pariah, and yet Trump has not varied one millimeter on his position. It is pro Netanyahu. In fact, you could imagine if Netanyahu was jailed or whatever, or somebody else was elected the prime minister, that Trump might still support Netanyahu. It's almost, his relationship is so close. Anyway, this is a betrayal of not his donors, not a betrayal of his rich Zionist donors, but it is a betrayal of his voters. And the voters put him in office, not the donors. You know, the voters showed up for Trump, and they didn't show up to Trump so he could continue the genocide that's going on. They wanted him to end the wars, and that includes all of them. And I'll just say one thing. I was very disheartened when Trump was at that same meeting with all the European guys, and he said, well, I've ended 6 wars in 6 months. Of course, that's not true, but he said that. And he said the 7th will be Ukraine. And he said, then I guess I'm done. There was no 8th. There was no address of, he didn't mention a thing about what's going on in Gaza. We're paying for that. So all Americans are going to pay the price for the evil that has been done in our name, really.
Yeah.
So this is a real problem, and Trump is disconnected from that. So yeah, foreign policy, and he loves foreign policy, yet it's the thing he knows least about.
To be fair, he's not wrong, because it's not a war, it's a slaughter.
Yeah, that's
like true. A war is against militaries. This is just slaughtering women and children.
It's a military slaughtering mainly unarmed people.
Yeah. I mean, some of these guys, the videos that come out with them having heavy machinery shooting at civilians, it's just outrageous.
Well,
Two questions.
go ahead.
No, please.
No, I mean, the guy there was a military guy, I can't think of, Aguilar, lieutenant colonel, another lieutenant colonel, but he just retired this year, I think. And he went to work for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which was a government created deal, to not really do anything. Well, to do everything with weapons and not really help people. Who knows what if it didn't work, it never intended to work. Anyway, he's a witness. And he came back and witnessed, on a number of media, but I saw him on Tucker. He did a long sit down there, 2 of them. But what he's describing is what you said. It's a military slaughter. I mean, it's people play fighting. It's almost like these are targets. These are little targets and big targets. Here, can you get the little target? Can you shoot him in the elbow? Can you shoot him in the head? It's very inhuman and inhumane. And of course, that's one thing. If it's happening around the world, we have nothing to do with it. We are funding it. Trump is paying for this, religiously paying for it. I hate to use the word religiously, but first thing he did was give Israel more money. That's one of the first things he did, more, and that's on top of what we already give them. That's on top of what we already gave them. So it's a real shame, and I think he's betrayed his base with this for sure.
Speaking in context of this betrayal, okay, I'm going to ask 2 questions. One on Ukraine, and we can end the part for the Ukraine, but I want to bounce there to get one in. What time do we have? Yeah, we have time. All right. So on the Ukraine front, does Trump realize that security guarantees that the U.S. would invest? I mean, that's assuming Europe can scrounge up Europeans to feed to the Russians in the first place. But does he realize that that's a trigger? The Europeans are using that as a trigger to get the Americans into the war. This belief that, well, if we feed X number of Europeans into a Russian wood chipper, that the U.S. would have to get involved. The U.S. will obviously get involved in order to back us up, meaning that's their belief. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But they're using it as a trigger for a larger war. If a peace deal is signed and there's, I don't know, a false flag that all of Europe is like, Russia did it. Russia obviously did it. They obviously blew up their own pipeline. And the Americans are like, okay, well, we have to go with the European media and the Ukrainian media that's saying that Ukraine only lost 8,000 people over this year as opposed to the 500,000.
Yeah.
Like, it's that part. Does he get that they're using that as a trigger in order to drag the U.S. into the war?
if people who defend Trump and really think that has great talent in what he's doing, and there are many people that still do, they'll tell you, oh, he's 4D chess. He understands how to negotiate. He knows when he's being taken for a ride. He's from New York. He's dealt with the mob. He dealt with New York government. He knows how to deal with people that will manipulate. He's a manipulator. So a manipulator knows it when he's being manipulated. That's what people would say. I don't believe that's true, because I don't think I think Trump likes money, and he thinks in Washington, like, he loves his tariffs because the short-term impact of the tariffs is people pay you tariffs and money goes into the treasury, and it looks like you're quote unquote making money. There are long-term impacts of tariffs which are going to harm. Well, I'm not saying this because I know what's going to happen here. I'm just saying every time when tariffs are used like this, they always come back to bite you. They bite your domestic people. They reduce their quality of life. It's just that simple. But he looks at it, well, government made money, so I made money. He thinks government's like a business that he might run. Right. So his understanding of war, I mean, how did he bribe the Europeans to even agree to maybe talk to the Russians? He said, well, I'm going to sell you a bunch of arms. I'll increase the amount of arms that I sell you. And then he goes and tells the American people, well, we're making money off of this because we're out of the war and we're selling more weapons than ever to European countries. They promised to buy $1 trillion, whatever it was. That is, that's not 4D chess. That's not, that isn't, that is Trump not truly understanding the economy, not truly understanding economic principles, and also not truly being anti-war, which is, he got a lot of anti-war votes. He pulled them from all the parties. He pulled them from libertarian anti-war, Republican anti-war, Democrat anti-war. All the anti-war people said, well, this guy, we might be able to take a chance here because he really talks like he wants peace and he wants to pull back and bring the troops home. And that vote is consistent. That group of voters votes for the person they think will bring the troops home. We've been doing this for how many years now? 50 years we've been voting to bring the troops home. And we never get what we want. We didn't get it with Trump either. But that's because Trump isn't really a man that believes in peace, in the sense of peace is so important. We will have to reduce the size of the Pentagon. How about we just cut it in a quarter? He did talk initially. You remember he threw a bone to his people, about his peace people. He threw a bone. He said, well, we're going to reduce military expenditures by 50% in the Pentagon. He did say that. And he said, we're going to talk China and Russia into doing that. And that sounds good. Except the next thing he did is say, I'm going to put $1 trillion into the Pentagon. He didn't even, they haven't passed an audit. He never asks for them to pass an audit. He just said, you're getting $1 trillion. Actually, it'll be more. Don't worry, guys. More is coming. Okay. He is not a man who embraces any principle of peace. He doesn't care about it. He cares about money. And that's okay. You can care about money, and he cares about America as he sees America, which is as a business. And guess what? That's a big problem because our business is war. That's what we do. We provide, the United States provides 47%. That's the latest number. It's close to 50% of the whole entire world's weaponry. Wow. We produce it here. That's what we make. He says, oh, we want to bring industry home. Well, wait a minute. We already got industry. We got plenty of it at home, and it's all military. I mean, it's overwhelmingly military. And so he says, well, that's our business. We got to make money with it. Well, you make money with the military. You need war. You need war. And this makes him exactly like all the other presidents. As soon as you end the war, you got to start a new one.
One last question. We have about 2 minutes.
Awesome.
You pointed out in your video with Judge Knapp that Israel is in a bad way. Mm-hmm. Now, there's one lone wolf that's on this channel that I have no idea why, but there's one lone wolf that will point out, well, they're in Lebanon. They've taken land in Lebanon. They've taken land in Syria. They're taking over Gaza, or they're at least trying to. And they're taking the West Bank. Yep. How is this a picture of failure in this case? Even if the world hates them, a superpower backs them.
Well, it's a North Korean model. They're just not there yet.
Yeah.
You have a militarized society. They have everybody serves except for the Haredim, I guess the ultra right religious groups are exempt from serving. Obviously, they can't have Palestinian
For now.
Israelis in the army. Well, they can't put them in the army. They'll
No,
get
no,
rid
I'm
of.
talking about the ultra orthodox. For
Oh
now.
yeah, they may put them.
For now.
They may put them in the military. That alone would be the beginning of the end for sure. This would be a wonderful thing because you've got their society. We think, oh well, Jewish people have a state of Israel, but Jewish people around the world and the religion of Judaism, just like Protestant, I really see it a lot like Protestantism. It has a very many variations,
Right.
With Islam, you got Shia, Sunni, maybe a few other odd, things.
Yeah.
But with Protestantism, I think there's probably 300 different variants, churches that are Protestant, but they don't share all the same views and they're very protective of each other. Well, in Judaism is very similar. You have atheist Jews, you have very modern Jews, you have liberal Jews, conservative Jews, and then you have the whole range of very religious Jews, and they're not all the same. I mean, there's a group of anti-Zionist Jews that have in New York and they're elsewhere around the world, and they actually, as a matter of religious interpretation, oppose the Zionist state. They said that you're misreading scripture, you're misreading the Torah and the Talmud. This is not what is intended. You're going to bring the whole religion, down by doing this. So that variation is evident in the society, and that's what makes a society rich, unless you're at war, because at war you have to control and propagandize everybody, and people don't like that. So there's a big problem economically. There's a problem. The other problem is, like, take North Korea. Now, North Koreans they can swim across the river to China, but they're probably going to get shot doing that. There's a possibility you can escape to China. And a long time ago, there was a possibility they could escape to South Korea, but that's been knitted up. There's no way. So North Koreans are a controlled society, and their religion is the worship of the state. See, so they're very uniform in their views. If they're not, they're probably rotting in a prison somewhere, or they've already left the country. So very homogenized group. They don't have a place to go. They don't have dual passports. But Israelis, because it is a global, diaspora, and relatively wealthy, there's not a lot of poor farming Jews anymore like there were, 100 years ago. They don't exist. They're urban. They operate in the modern society. They make money. They travel. They have dual passports, all of them, some triple. So when they decide that Israel's not working out, they can leave. And it was very interesting when the Iran 12-day war supposedly was
there were
happening.
so many that left. Yeah.
Yeah, but what was one of the very first things? I mean, it was the second day of the war, and Netanyahu says, nobody's leaving the country. None of you guys. And people, what were they doing? They were renting small boats and going over to Cyprus and other places. So Israel has a big problem. Their own people aren't happy with occupying Lebanon, murdering the West Bank people, genociding Gaza, taking over parts of Syria. That is a prescription for constant conflict and constant war. And, the Zionist origin story is very much a story of Jewish fighters, Jewish terrorists. They're very proud of that. The fact that Jewish people can fight. But that is a new interpretation of what it means to be a Jew. That is not, I think, what most Jews are totally comfortable with. Their IDF alone has been criticized as being poorly trained. That was one of the things that Lieutenant Colonel Aguilar said. He said, if you wanted to fix Gaza, one of the first things you would do would be train the IDF on how to conduct the operation that they've been tasked to conduct, instead of shooting kids, instead of blowing up hospitals. There's ways to move people around. It's not necessarily right, but if the state wants to do it, you can do it in a better way, and you can do it in a horrific way. And part of why Israel's doing it in such a horrific way is because they don't know what they're doing, and the IDF is poorly trained. So all of this, in addition to the economic boycotts, in addition to bankruptcies, the Southern Port of Eilat has gone bankrupt now for probably the third and final time. It's not so big problems. Think about the rebuilding. Think about what they're going to come to the United States and say, here, we need the money to rebuild. None of this is a prescription for a healthy state that has 7.3 million Jewish people and a couple million other people who live there and clean the pools.
Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. Did I get that last part right? Kwiatkowski?
Yes, that's good.
Excellent. I always like to get people's names right. She is retired U.S. Air Force officer with assignments, including duties as Pentagon Desk Officer, various roles as the National Security Agency. She's author of several books, including African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future. That was in 2000, and also Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solutions. We got to hit that next time you come on, if you indeed come on, if this wasn't too bad for you. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it too.